By federal standards, 6% of the state lacks access to high-speed internet. FCC data showed in 2017 that the gap widens all across the valley, including in Union County, where an estimated 21% lack such access. Why or why not is the availability of broadband internet critical in rural, unserved, or underserved parts of the county? And what steps, if any, should county government take to address this issue?
Well, I do think broadband service is critical. I don't think it's a right that every citizen of our county or of our state has a right that other folks at the taxpayer expense provide them with broadband access. But I do think it's a necessary thing, and as things technologically move down the road with healthcare, with 911 communications, with all of these, as people move more towards cell phones, broadband access is critical. Folks that have kids in school are seeing that as their kids are being sent home with more and more online type assignments. How many kids go to the library anymore? Not that many, I don't think. So it is critical, and I think there are some things the county can do. I don't think the county should take the role of buying towers or producing the solution themselves. I think the county's role is more about bringing people to the table and making sure that there's free access. You know, in my case at home, I had DSL for years, and as a company president, I suffered because of that slow connection. But it wasn't because government did something that changed. It was because a business in my area, even though it's a rural area, there's a Penn Cheese's sitting across the valley from me, and they requested higher speed access, and they paid to bring it. And so when they did, the folks in the community benefited from that. So I think having open access, having an even playing field for businesses even in rural areas, and not this mentality that we've got to keep rural areas so rural as no businesses whatsoever are in them. We need to keep that level mindset in terms of how we approach development and helping businesses with economic development specifically. Make sure that everyone's at the table that needs to be. Whatever our state, whatever our Fed's role is going to be, we're not going to have a say necessarily in what their role is. We can make sure that the local folks know what's going on, know who they need to speak to, and let private industry as much as possible solve this issue. They've solved it with cell phones. I mean, they haven't solved it in rural areas with cell phone coverage so much, but the government didn't need to distribute cell phones in order for us all to get them in the last 20 years. And I think as more and more folks speak up about this need, as broadband becomes much more integral part of our daily lives, business is going to solve it, not government.
Union County Commissioners went 8 years without a tax increase, before a slight increase entering 2017. The board held the line in the following two budgets. Are there any scenarios that you think a tax increase is unavoidable? And do you foresee that playing out over the coming 4-year term?
Well, let me disagree with the question, because I've done my homework on this and I think the premise is a little bit flawed. In terms of the overall millage, the general budget millage, you're right, there was just one increase in 2017. However, in 2014, when the Union County Commissioners took over the bailed out Great Stream Commons, they raised the debt service millage more than double, from 0.34 mils to 0.84 mils. In addition to that, there are many fees that folks in our county are upset about. There's that $5 registration fee that was taxed and added on. There's the hotel tax that was increased from 3% to 5% in order to take over the rail trail. So saying that there's only been one tax increase is not really, I don't think, completely transparent. These current commissioners haven't been as fiscally responsible as I think they should have been. Saying that, in terms of my overall approach to tax increases, I've been a township supervisor for 10 years. I held the line on taxes for those 10 years. We never raised taxes. In fact, several times it came up in meetings during budget time. What are we going to do? Do we think we need to raise taxes? And we were able to analyze things, look at the numbers, find ways to tighten our belts, and do it without a tax increase. And I think almost without exception, we will have the ability to do that in the county. You see, government gets natural increases in its revenue as development happens, as folks improve their homes, as they build new homes. Those property tax rates, even if they're kept the same, result in additional revenue because there's a greater number of properties that are being taxed, and those properties have higher values. So I think that's the way government revenue should grow, and not through tax increases.
What do you believe to be the most pressing issues facing Union County residents, and do you have a plan to address it?
Well, I think when we talk about pressing issues, we have to differentiate between what are the issues, the overall issues that they're facing, versus what are the issues that a commissioner can fix. I mean, obviously, when you hear about the opioid crisis, for instance, as a major issue, I agree that it's a major issue. Unfortunately, I don't think the county has a huge role to play in that. Now, we certainly can do something in terms of the county jail, the county sheriff's department, our courts, how we're treating those that has succumbed to addiction, in terms of how we're trying to get them back into the workforce. We're not looking to penalize them if they've just been a user rather than a seller. It's not my objective to try to put in jail all of those folks that use drugs, but rather to try to rehabilitate them. And rehabilitation means more than some training inside. Sometimes it means things like making sure they have a driver's license when they get out of jail for whatever crimes they've committed. So first of all, don't put folks in jail for nonviolent crimes. And second of all, when they are in jail, let's do what we can to make sure they don't end up back in jail. I think that is one area where our current commissioners have done a pretty good job. I don't think they've held the line on everything, but in terms of their efforts to work with law enforcement and the courts to reduce recidivism, I think that's been positive in our county. In terms of other issues that I think are important to Union County residents, the reason I'm running is because I feel like in our county commissioner board we have a lack of leadership. Leadership, first of all, means presence. It means being in the building. We have commissioners that make $70,000 a year. They should be working full-time in that building, or they should be cutting their salary. You can't provide leadership if you're not there. If you don't have presence among the employees of Union County, among the residents of Union County, you're not exercising leadership. Secondly, leadership means direction. Where are we going? What's our vision? And one of the areas I think we've lost that vision is the fact that residents are our customers. Thomas Jefferson said, "Government is the people's servant, not its masters." And some of the employees, not all the employees, but some of the employees within the Union County government seem to have lost that totally. And I'm not surprised because, again, the lack of leadership from the top down, demonstrating that with presence and then direction, what we're doing, why we're here, what we can do about the issues of our residents. That's the direction that needs to come from the commissioners. That's the role of a commissioner, and that's the role I've played in Union Township. I've played that role with the County Association of Township Officials, in my role on the board at the Central Keystone COG. We need better leadership. The third portion of leadership that I think is lacking is the one of communication. We need to realize that the local press is an ally to us. It's not our enemy. We don't need to try to keep things from the press, but rather we need to use the press and let the press come to us in good communication to communicate and get out to the public the things that they really need to know. They need greater accessibility. They need to be able to hold us accountable. And if we're living in a closed environment, trying to keep ourselves shielded from the press in order to not be held accountable by the public, that demonstrates a lack of leadership. So those are the reasons I'm running. I think we need greater accountability in county government. We have a great county in Union County. It's a great place to live. We deserve a great county government too, and one that's led by 3 commissioners that demonstrate great leadership.
You addressed some issues that I had asked about in regard to most pressing. Is there an issue, what would you say is the most under the radar issue that Union County residents are facing, something that Union County commissioners could address?
Sure. I think the fiscal responsibility is a big issue. I did a poll on my Facebook page, Allred for Commissioner. Do a search for it on Facebook. But I did a poll and I said, how many folks know that our county commissioners raised taxes or fees 4 times in the last 5 years? Well, 80% said they did not know that. They were not aware of that. And yet it's hitting them. It's hitting their pocketbooks, but they don't realize the full scope of it. I think another issue that they aren't aware of, that they need to be made aware of, is that Our current commissioners deserted our 911 first responders. When they did this 911 merger, on the face of it, they were saying, look, we're going to have good communication, buy-in, we're bringing everyone to the table. But behind closed doors, what I've heard from people that were employed at the county at that time and involved in the process was they weren't saying we're going to look at this as a possibility. They were saying this is a done deal. We're going to make it happen. You need to be bringing people in here that are in agreement with it rather than keeping an open mind and deciding if it's the right thing to do. And then in addition to that, they hung our first responders out to dry in terms of their pagers, because with the 911 merger, the fire companies in Union County are going to have to get new pagers that are on the same bandwidth as the Snyder County pagers. Currently, many of the first responders that serve along the border between Union and Snyder are using two pagers because they can't get information from just one pager. So all these fire companies are going to be pressed into replacing these pagers at tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. The commissioner said when they were justifying the 911 merger that it was about cost savings. They were going to save $1 million in 7 years, as the Daily Item reported. They should have included these costs to replace pagers, and they certainly should have included our first responders, the fire chiefs, the police chiefs in our region throughout the entire process, and made it an open-minded decision, transparent decision, not one that was made behind closed doors and then foisted upon our first responders that are really critical to our county.
Last question, why should county voters choose you to become county commissioner?
Well, I think I've demonstrated leadership, as I mentioned before. I think I'm highlighting the issues that Union County voters care about. I think I've shown myself to be an advocate for the taxpayer, for the little guy. I'm not one that's going to play favorites with the farmers. I'm not one that's going to play favorites with the businessmen. It's really about the taxpayers keeping their money and in a free and open market using it the way they best see fit, not having a county government that continues to grow, to be in debt. I mean, look at our debt. While other counties that are nearby, like Snyder County and Bradford County, have reduced, if not eliminated, their debt, Union County's debt has grown. That doesn't demonstrate fiscal responsibility. The very fact that I'm out there highlighting it, letting people know about it, and committing to stopping it here. The buck stops here, and we're going back. We need to go backwards on debt. We don't need to follow the role or the lead of our federal government that's $22 trillion in debt and say, well, they can do it, we can do it too. No, we're going to prove here and now that conservatism works, that we can be fiscally responsible here at home. I can do that. I've done it in Union Township. I've done it in the other organizations in which I've volunteered. I've done it in my business. I can do it in Union County. So that's why I'm asking for their vote on May 21st.
Billy, thank you for being here with us.
Sure, thank you.
Appreciate it.